transportation technologies, not only for the urban sector but also for aviation sector, for shipping sector and all that. And electric vehicles is one of the options for decarbonization of transport in future. Because there are other options such as synthetic fuels, hydrogen fuel cells, which could also come into the fray. Because we have net zero target. So we have some time ahead of us, so there will be transformation of different technologies. So we will have more options as we go forward. Lastly, I would like to say that as of now, when we look at, especially from the mitigation vehicles, as of now in India, do not emerge as a low carbon option because the electricity which is being used for these electric vehicles is coming largely from coal-based plants. So we need to also move on decarbonization of the electricity sector, and definitely the government of India is doing a lot on that side. So, but also in our consideration. Thank you, and those are my opening remarks. Thanks, Chair.
And very good insight that he has mainly covered 4 issues, that we have to focus on the cities having population less than 1 million. The population is going to increase in those cities and we have to plan very, very meticulously in those cities. Then he is also emphasized on walking and cycling. Then on technology front, he is right that right now we are only focusing on promotion of electric vehicles, but there are other options which are likely to emerge in the coming years, like synthetic fuel and hydrogen fuel cell. And the last point which he has mentioned that about that the electricity which is being used by electric vehicles should be clean energy. My next question to Abhay Bakre, who is Director General, Bureau of Energy Efficiency, that taking cue from this, what Mr. Subhash has told, that it is not important that we introduce electric vehicle, but the power drawn from the electric vehicle should be from the clean source. So my question to Mr. Abhay Bakre ji, TG, is that what is the targeted mission of reduction of CO2 in transport sector and roadmap of BE in this regard, Bureau of Energy Efficiency, and what are the priority for Vision 2047 in energy sector?
Give the clear trajectories and also answer the questions here. So we have seen so many solutions being put forth by different panelists for these 3 days. So what do we have in front of our country? The 3 clear timelines. The first one, 2070 net zero, which is part of Punjab. Second, the vision which we are making for 2047. The 2070 is a long-term strategy, LTLEDs we call it, which we are going to submit to COP, which is starting today. That is in line with what we are thinking by 2047. And the third timeline is 2030, which is our Panchamrit goal for NDCs. Now, how different sectors will shape up, depending on the growth requirement for the country. The first priority is that the country has to grow. The second thing is that to grow, we need the energy. Now, how are we going to shape up the different sectors? And how the transport sector is important? What are the solutions here? So when we talk about 2047 vision, we are expecting most of the sectors to be peaking. Now, one thing which perhaps not discussed fully is the peaking. If we want to achieve 2070 net zero, we need to aim what is the peaking year for every sector. So first of all, the power generation, very rightly said by Mr. Dhar, that when the power generation will peak, unless we peak, we cannot go to zero. So power generation, we are expecting between 2035 to 2040, it should peak. Because currently we are having about 1200. It will also answer, once the power system starts peaking and lowering the emissions, we are going to have more and more cleaner electricity available for the electrification as well as for the electric vehicle. The second thing is the transport. The transport is expected to peak somewhere around 2040 or so. because by that time perhaps half the population will turn towards electric vehicle. Predominantly two-wheeler, three-wheeler will happen in another decade or so, at least the new sales. The new vehicles in four-wheeler and heavy duty will continue to be procured by 2030, 2035. They will have another life of 10-15 years. So by 2040 or so, we will start peaking, and by 2045, we will be having a plateau about transport sector. Industry will again peak around 2045 or so, but it will take longer time to get to net zero. So these are the projections or the trajectory, how we are going to have it. Very rightly said, the power generation has got 40% of emissions as of now, followed by transport sector, which is about 10%. If we remove the civil aviation and the shipping, etc., we still have road transport almost 90%, so about 9%. So in this regard, electrification of transport sector will actually be the key. It will not happen so easily till 2030, and by 2030 our target is to have somewhere about 180 million ton of additional projected savings as of 2021. This is the Glasgow commitment, as you are aware, 1 billion ton. Out of 1 billion ton, industry will have somewhere around 300 to 320, followed by transport around 180. Then buildings will have commercial, residential, both put together around 200. So this is the trajectory we are expecting, and the key policies which will actually enable this is about the electrification and decarbonizing the power sector. So once the power sector is decarbonized, and that's why the full thrust is on getting the 500 gigawatt, getting the grid as green as possible. Some of the measures which we have already announced are that electric charging infrastructure, they are going to have additional facilities if they are availing directly green supply from open access. So open access is being facilitated. There will be a single part tariff. There will be additional benefits in terms of getting the open access within 15 days in urban area and maybe in other parts less than one month, etc. So all these six measures will actually move towards electrifying the economy, in particular the industry and the transport sector. And as we discussed today, electrification of transport sector will happen much sooner than what we are expecting. And I am sure by before 2047, most of our energy mix will be Atmanirbhar, and we are hardly going to have any kind of import of energy. And that will basically happen because of renewables, the transport sector demand, and also industry converting themselves to different cleaner fuels. Thank you so much for inviting me.
This topic is very, very important. Time is short, and we would like to have presentation from Mr. Abhay Bakre. He has given the roadmap that by 2040 we will have e-vehicle, completely e-vehicle, but as per his this trajectory, we can have this achievement of 100% electric vehicle before 2040, well before 2047. And he has also talked about the peaking of this thing, that we will peak around 2040 in transport sector, power generation and for transport related 2040 to 45. Okay, so he has given insight, and we would like to have presentation on this thing in other forum. We will again invite him to have his views on this topic. Now I request Mr. Mukund Sinha, Transport Specialist ADB, and my question to him is, does he visualize urban mobility in 2047 in India?
Opportunity. Talking about urban mobility in 2047, that is around 25 years from now. Let me cover this question in three aspects. I think first aspect is about talking about metros, and I think metros will remain definitely. I mean, we are still building metros, and the life cycle is at least 30, 35, 40 years for the rolling stock and the civil structure. But metros will remain. The change what I see is that we would have greater coverage in the tier 2, tier 3 cities. Maybe new system designs like Metro Neo, Metro Light would become more prevalent. But more than that, what I visualize is that we would be having a more efficient system, and efficiency, basically the cutting edge of efficiency is the IT system, the signaling system. Currently we're going for communication-based train control. Maybe at some point of time, we will be switching to intelligent trains where each train talks to the other train, and that is how the operation efficiency is increased, as well as we are able to carry much more passengers than what we are doing today. Maybe it's also a wish list I have that we will have our own design, an Indian design for the bogies, which we don't have currently. It's all vendor driven. Probably we could have one Indian design so that it reduces the cost. And why I say it's my wish list, because we'll be forced to do it. Metro companies will be forced to do this. The costs are going to increase. Currently, the metro systems are at the early stages. A time will come when you will need replacement and you'll have to reduce costs. And that is when I think we will be forced to look for an indigenous design, indigenous wheel design, indigenous bogie design, the entire system design. Talking about buses, I was reading an article which said that by 2040 we would have something like 20 lakh electric buses, and I think that's very much going to happen. What I think is more important is what the Honorable Minister mentioned in the inaugural speech, that about the silent revolution, and which most of our speakers have been speaking about, that probably we'll switch over to 100% renewable energy. Talking about transport in general, I think we will have to have a more interconnected transport in the cities, where accessibility is the foremost target or foremost aim or foremost goal for any urban transport system to be put in place, where you would have a single app and a seamless connection between various modes, so that it becomes easy for the passengers to commute from point to point. I think fare integration is something which will see a lot of improvement in terms of technology. We already have the UPI system. Somehow, if it can be integrated with the NCMC, I think that is one step we are looking forward to in the coming years. Maybe by 2047, we could have something like a facial recognition, where we combine Aadhaar with UPI and then the payment system of the metros, and where you don't need to carry a card or a QR code, and Aadhaar does have a biometric where the face is already there. Maybe some tweaking would be required, some updating would be required, but I would see that there's something which could happen, and I would like to add this in my wish list. So yeah, so those are the three areas in which I think the vision would be like what I just mentioned. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
You have covered that metro will remain, and new alternatives, Metro Light and Metro Neo is going to come in Tier 2, Tier 3 city. Then we should have our Atmanirbhar design of bogies, which is used in the rolling stock of metro system. Then about buses, he has mentioned that by 2040 we should have 20 lakh electric buses. Then he has discussed about this interconnectivity of different modes of transport system through National Common Mobility Card, and he has touched upon this transit payment system which will be available in 2047. He has touched upon that. Now, my next question to Speaker Anumita. My question is, to achieve net zero decarbonization, what are the lessons to reform future strategies to scale up transportation solutions?
Thank you so much, Jaydeepji. So many of you know, all of you know that today the world is gathering in Egypt for COP27. But many of you do not know that for the first time ever, that the COP presidency has listed mobility and transport as an issue of importance. And they are now looking for, and that's what we are expecting, that all the key stakeholders from around the world are expected to make high-level commitment as to how they are going to transform transportation. And the reason why this is being done is a recognition recognition of the fact, and what IBCC is saying, is that the transport sector emissions are the fastest growing emissions today, and we need transformative changes. India, in its NDC, has also now talked about the low emission, inclusive, low carbon transportation, even estimated that we need about $1 to $2 trillion of funds to be able to make that transformation over the few decades now. Now, having said that, this means that we are really looking for massively transformative changes by 2047. And what would that be? Certainly, at least 90% of all motorized trips should be by public transport, walking, cycling, and that's the kind of scale we need. And if there is any vehicle on the road, it needs to be zero emission. And that's not enough. We also need to keep our city design compact, accessible, so that you are able to reduce distances need to travel. But all of that will have to be done in an inclusive and affordable manner, keeping in mind that just a couple of years ago, when we looked at Delhi, we found that 34% people cannot even afford the public transport fare. So it is not only about modernizing and scaling up public transport options, but also keeping it affordable for everyone. Now, if we know what to do, the question is, it is even more important to focus on the enablers. How are we going to do this? Now, what is interesting about India is that policies have changed quite a bit. If you look at our NUTP, Transit-Oriented Development Policy, our National Habitat Standards, our, even the master plans, like for instance in Delhi, the way they're changing, they're all saying the right things. But the challenge is about bridging the gap between policy and implementation. So when we look at the grassroots, are things changing? Then what we find, yes, a lot of interesting things happening. In fact, UMI every year itself is a reminder that how we celebrate action in cities. But the challenge is that of scale and speed. That how do you make that transformation at a scale and how do you enable that? So clearly now the focus has to shift towards understanding the gaps. Gaps, one, not only in the funding strategy, but a complete comprehensive fiscal strategy that we require, where you are not only making new money available, but you're also reorienting the old money with clear indicators that you are investing in sustainable mobility infrastructure. And along with that, any investment that happens in the sector needs to align with all the policy indicators that have already been laid out, and we have to ensure that the new infrastructure doesn't lock in more carbon and more pollution in the long run. So clearly the agenda is big, but for all this, while we need a fiscal strategy, we also now need a very clear mandate, because mandate currently is very unclear. That is the state government, city governments, do they have a clear mandate to do that transformative change? Often we find that the municipalities, they include public transport as a discretionary measure rather than as a mandate, and then that action is more or less ad hoc, intermittent. Those things will have to change, so therefore a mandate, policy at all levels, well integrated, with clear principles to guide new investments. But we also have to enable that with good skill building, knowledge building, because all new generation principles and approaches, in fact to the extent that when the previous budget talked about promoting special mobility zone, we still do not understand what is the contour of those kind of programs, how do we need to design that, how should departments, municipalities should internalize those changes and make it happen. I think that's where the focus has to be. Thank you.
To public transport or cycling. Then she has also touched upon the compact cities design, and for achieving all these things to create infrastructure for such transport system, she has emphasized that we should have some enabling policy guidelines, and we have to take lessons from our mistakes or in the extent policy and reorient our policy, and it should be mandated for the municipality to promote public transport. Thank you. MRCL. He is in charge of 3 metro system. He runs this Lucknow Metro and he is also.
Thank you, sir, and good afternoon to all of you. So, as we know, in last 7 years, almost 527 kilometers of metro has been added, and currently we are running almost 776 kilometers of metros, which is in operation. But more important is that almost 1,303 kilometers is under construction, and 1,400 kilometers additionally is under approval. So if we add all those, right now we have a vision of at least 3,100 kilometers of metro which are in planning or progress. So when we talk about 25 years ahead, with the target year of 2047, a target of 5,000 kilometers, I feel will be a pessimistic target as clearly pointed out by Honorable Minister during the inauguration period. I feel that in a horizon year of net zero mission 2017, a target of 8,000 kilometers can be achieved in much earlier time. And perhaps that is the target which we should focus right now, considering that almost 58% of our population will be shifted to city in 2060 as per the study, from the 38% in 2026. So it's almost a paradigm shift, and definitely a business as usual scenario cannot be adopted. So if we have to prioritize, the first thing will be of course the scale of economy in each and every action. And of course the first one is the approval. So combined approval, common tendering, maybe a rate contract kind of scenario is definitely required. Further to expedite it, the detailed specification is required to be frozen instead of a general specification so that a proper interface issues can be resolved. We can have a ABC type of standard specifications. We can standardize the civil structure to reduce the repeated design, cost and TDC requirement. And of course there can be a standing committee to review all the technical specification at a required interval, maybe 3 years, once in a 3 year or 5 year. The third most important point of course will be the cost reduction also. There is a drastic need to reduce the specification, considering that now we will be penetrating more and more in tier 2 cities. So reduction in specifications, particularly on lift, escalator, chillers, rolling stock, everywhere it is required, and many of the metros have made a lot of progress in recent time, which has resulted in a reduction in even the benchmark prices also. But the biggest challenge to achieve this target will be on the rolling stock side. The international rolling stock market right now is totally turmoil. There is a huge demand coming from Mexico, Japan, UK, of course India, and a lot of it from the Middle East also. So right now if we talk about Indian market, 2,000 cars are required by 2025 with a horizon of almost 20,000 crores rupees. But on top of it, Indian Railway is also moving ahead, and almost 200 trains, 40,000 crores of expenditure with a limited capacity of production in-house. Other side is that some time back we have a 5 manufacturing plant in India, and now in coming years we will be having only 2 main company left. So, and that too with a yearly production capacity of around 200 cars only. So there is a great need and requirement to review this and find out alternate methods, because global market there is a huge demand and Indian market is also going to expand exponentially. Now other 2-3 factors quickly which I can summarize is the faster implementation. A lot of automation is required. We are still going for, say for a traction track, laying through a manual method. Of course, there is a lot of options can be immediately implemented. Greater emphasis is required on the efficient project management also. Many metros have shifted to 5D BIM, front desk has been evolved in many of the metros, but a lot of things is required to be done and a lot of standardization is required. Because of the manpower, efficiency, shortfall, competence. This is another issue. It is not only the material requirement and rolling stock requirement, but competency on the manpower side is also going to be a crucial factor. Maybe all the training center which metros have already created can have an affiliation with the university and can start helping them to start few courses. Last but not the least, the operational competency, because once these metros start out, as it started in going into an operational phase, a lot of competence is required. A proper mix of white collar and blue collar is required to optimize the cost. A lot of computerized maintenance management system is RAMS monitoring is required to be optimized, to be standardized, formats is to be evolved by all the metros who are already doing excellent work but independently. So everybody has to join their hand together to standardize those things. And last but not the least is the question of profitability which is always asked. A lot of metros are going into property development trends, but a lot of land parcel has also been handed over or being handed over to rail metros. So how a real estate transformation can be done, how an expertise from those field is interface with the metro industry is also required to be a question here. So if I summarize, there are a lot of change required. We cannot move ahead with the business as usual methodology. Automation is one thing, competence is another, and biggest requirement will be perhaps to scale the production also. Thank you very much.
I would just like to begin with a disclaimer that master plans are essentially land-based plans and that direct the growth of the city. And from that point of view, master plans can definitely help in achieving the vision of decarbonizing transport, but only to an extent. The tools that the master plan can use for enabling this would be first by decreasing the need to travel in the city. So this would be done based on the principles of spatial proximity, wherein we can place our activity centers close to our homes, and we can encourage mixed-use development. We can also encourage transit-oriented development, a topic which is most talked about nowadays. Master plans can propose development frameworks, regulations, policies, development control norms to enable this. Master plans can also increase the efficiencies of travel within our cities. And for this, we can improve access to public transport systems by recommendations towards improving the first and last mile connectivity, facilitating onward journeys by public transport or by shared modes of mobility by multimodal integration. We can also improve the quality of public transport to provide the same level of comfort that a private vehicle provides, and unless that is done, the dream that we all have of enabling a modal shift in favor of public transport would just remain a dream. The third thing that I would like to focus upon, which the master plan can enable, is supporting fuel transition. We are all talking about EVs nowadays, and there's a lot of push towards electrification of our public transport fleet as well as private vehicles. So this transition from fossil fuels to electricity, master plan can support that by basically recommending land allotments for setting up battery charging stations. It can also enable or allow retrofitting of the existing petrol pumps, diesel, fossil fuel stations to allow establishment of battery charging and battery swapping infrastructure. Master plan can facilitate creation of battery recycling or let's say disposal ecosystem. I think this is one topic that we are not really talking about much. Everyone is talking about electrification. But what will happen with the battery waste, which actually gets generated after, just imagine a situation 9 to 10 years down the line when all these batteries will need to be replaced or, recycled or disposed. Then do we have the infrastructure for that? So master plan can actually suggest development of this kind of an ecosystem for that. In addition to that, master plans can provide norms for battery charging stations in establishment or installation of battery charging infrastructure in parking areas, in residential areas, etc. Master plans can also actually focus a lot on creating walking and cycling infrastructure, something to supplement our, vehicular mobility or motor-vehicular interventions. I would just like to conclude by saying that whilst most of the master plan recommendations can be mandatory in nature, the ones that are based on allocation of land, but some of them which are associated with operational issues or integration issues, they would still remain advisory in nature. Thank you.
You have touched upon that first and last mile connectivity and quality of transport and master plan for electric vehicle charging, which is very, very essential, battery and swapping, battery charging and swapping. Then battery disposal will also be an important issue, because if we increase number of vehicles, then battery disposal has to be done in a certain way, and certain site has to be identified that where it is to be disposed. Then norms for battery charger, she has mentioned about this parking area and residential area, then walking and cycling infrastructure. And she mentioned very clearly that master plan to some extent give this projections of traffic. It has to be done through this traffic survey, standard way of traffic survey. Thank you. Now little time is left. If we can have some quick question from the audience.
The second thing, because whenever we talk, and the chair had already mentioned about the net zero ambition for India for 2070 and the 2047 vision, urban vision.
Sir, to present memento to Mr. Mukund Kumar Sinha. I now request Vikas Kumar sir to present memento to Ms. Anumita Roy Chaudhary, Executive Director, Center for Science and Environment. I now request Vikas Kumar sir to present memento. I now request Vikas Kumar sir to present memento to Mr. Subhash Dhar, Senior Researcher at United Nations Environment Program. I now request Vikas Kumar sir to present memento to Ms. Sarika Chakravarti, Senior Sector Coordinator, NIUA. Thank you very much, Vikas sir. We thank you all for joining us and for your cooperation. Please join us at 3:30 for the validatory session. Thank you very much.
Of time, we have to close this session, and if any questions are there, it can be asked through our IUT website, and we will be able to answer those questions. And yes, you may.
Draw your kind attention. The Honorable Governor and protected some VIPs, they will be coming one by one. I may request you to kindly be here. So that is the security protocol. They will be coming from this side. So next 10-15 minutes, if you can spend the time here without going out, it will be quite appropriate from our part. Second thing is that due to security reasons, kindly keep your mobile phones in the silent mode, and otherwise again it will be announced. And third thing, the Honorable Governor, the MOS and other people will be visiting the exhibition. So So it will be appropriate, like those metro companies which have put their stalls, the senior post person like MD, DMRC, the dignitaries are a very enriching. I can assure you that a very enriching the legislative function. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jaideep sir and Loknath sir. I would now invite Shri Anjum Parvez, Managing Director, Bangalore Metro Rail Corporation Limited, to present mementos to our session chair and panelists. Sir, please. I would like to request Anjum sir to present memento to Jaideep sir. I now request Anjum sir to present memento to Mr. Loknath Behra, MD, Kochi Metro Rail Corporation Limited. I now request Anjum sir to present memento to Mr. Abhay Bakre, DG, Bureau of Energy Efficiency, Government of India. I now request Anjum sir to present memento to Mr. Sushil Kumar, Managing Director, Uttar Pradesh Metro Rail Corporation Limited. Thank you very much, Anjum sir. I would now invite Shri Vikas Kumar, Managing Director, Delhi Metro Rail Corporation Limited, to come on the stage and present mementos to our distinguished panelists. Vikas Kumar sir.